Welcome to the world of Alexander the Great. I am Professor Glenn Bew, and in this course for the summer, session number 2, we'll be assisted by my very capable assistant, Jared Delaney, who graduated from Virginia Tech in honors and is going off to Berkeley this coming fall to enter into a graduate program in classical archaeology and other matters, classical studies. So the two of us will try to make the best of it all. If you take a look at the picture that we have attached, you'll see the two of us on location at Philippi in Macedonia. Philippi was one of the foundation cities of Philip II of Macedon, or Macedonia sometimes called, the father of Alexander the Great. So it seems appropriate for a course on Alexander, and particularly focusing on Macedonia, to give you a bit of a taste through the picture of it. The shot was taken about 2 years ago during an excursion from an excavation in southern Bulgaria that a center that I'm associated with in Sofia, Bulgaria, was running a field school, and Jared was the first Virginia Tech student to become a digger at that excavation. So this shot comes from a day excursion out into Macedonia, out of Bulgaria. So just a little bit of local color. In this course, and I will confess from the very start, it's a bit daunting. I have taught the course many times in a traditional format, but this is the first time that I'm trying it on an online course. So I am going to count on you to assist me, correct me, even perhaps at times laugh at my efforts. But we will muddle through, and I'm very sure that the more techno-savvy Jared Delaney will keep us on the straight and narrow. So in order to proceed at this point for the course, I thought it might be a very good idea to go through the syllabus and talk about some of the expectations of the course. There is probably no more interesting figure from the ancient world, and certainly one that has received a huge body of work about him, than Alexander the Great, the Macedonian, who led his armies across all of Asia, defeated the Persian Empire, and after his death, his generals established a series of kingdoms on what had been his empire. And this is a story worth telling, and certainly a story worth investigating. So, hopefully, with your syllabus in hand, let's just take a look at what we're hoping to do this semester, this term. I have provided a summary. I thought I might just sort of read through it you can just sort of read along with me. But it encapsulates, I believe, the importance of the subject and what we're going to try to do. No one in history has captured the imagination quite like Alexander the Great, and his birth and death years are listed. Before his 33rd birthday, he had become, in turn, king of Macedonia, hegemon, which means leader of the Greek world, commander-in-chief of a pan-Hellenic campaign, meaning all the Greeks, or majority of the Greeks, sworn to destroy the Persian Empire. He was then, along the way, or became Pharaoh of Egypt, and thus by tradition of the many dynasties of Egypt, a god king. He was a founder and a namesake of a new city, which is known as Alexandria in Egypt. There's also an Alexandria in Virginia, as you know. He became King of Kings, which was the title of the Persian king of the Persian Empire, the overlord of Indian potentates, important regional dynasts in the Indian area, and ultimately he became, by his own request, a god to be worshipped by the Greeks. Who else in history can claim such honors? A brilliant general, charismatic, but reckless to a fault, and we will certainly see that, he remains an enigma to scholars then and now. Alexander the Great has many faces, and the ancient sources only add to the confusion. One thing is certain. The world after Alexander was radically different from that of his father, Philip II, and has earned the right to its own name as an historical period, which we call Hellenistic. There are various historical periods in Greek history, and the one that precedes the Hellenistic is the classical period, the 5th and 4th centuries BC, the golden age of Athens and literature and so forth. So the Hellenistic is the 300 years that follows the classical age. This Hellenistic world, as we have termed it, and it is a modern term, they certainly didn't use it in the ancient world, it's really a 19th century term used by historians. This world stretched from the Balkans to India, carrying Hellenic culture in the wake of the Macedonian armies and their conquests, of course. Alexandria of Egypt became the greatest metropolis of the era and attracted the finest poets, artists, astronomers, mathematicians, and others to its fabulous library. Cleopatra provides, and in this regard, Cleopatra is Cleopatra VII of the line of the Ptolemies of Egypt. We'll talk about that later, so she's a Macedonian. Cleopatra provides a convenient endpoint to the age as the last of Alexander's successors. Alexander's incredible career marks the division between two historical periods. It is both end and beginning. So by a close reading of the primary sources, literary, epigraphical, and papyrological, and the integration of the rich archaeological, artistic, and architectural evidence, this course will trace the career of Alexander and highlight the critical issues of his times and explore his legacy in the Hellenistic period. And there on your syllabus you see the dates that are usually associated with the Hellenistic period, 323 to 30 BC. To a certain degree, the course is bipartite. In other words, divided into two parts. The first part has to do with the rise and career and fortunes of Alexander, and the second part has to do with the consequences of his incredible success in building an empire, destroying one empire, the Persian Empire, and building another empire. And the world then, the 300 years that follows his death, clearly stands as his legacy. Even if he didn't intend to do all of the things that occurred, clearly that world could not have happened without the arrival, the presence, and the conquests of Alexander the Great. So this course then is in two parts. One, Alexander, and two, his legacy. Now, if we take a look at the required readings, you'll note, first, there is a book that I edited and also contributed to, that I published a few years ago in what is known as the Cambridge Companion to the Hellenistic World. It's part of a Cambridge University series. And it is an anthology of essays by various contributors, both Anglo and American. One of the requirements was to draw upon both an English scholarly group as well as an American one. And so throughout, there are a number of essays by English or American scholars, and I have a couple of contributions in that. This will provide a sort of a topic base to certain issues that are characteristic of the Hellenistic age. And they're presented in a way that is primarily introductory, because most of you, I suspect, are not Hellenistic scholars, and therefore this will give us an opportunity to have a sort of a take on what's going on with respect to a given topic as we go through. The second entry on your required readings is Malcolm Arrington's A History of the Hellenistic World. This is our basic text for the Hellenistic period. Very detailed, but very, very scholarly. We'll just work our way through it in the second part of the course, but it is the primary textbook with all of the essential historical outline. I will be providing a number of outlines of my own, but Arrington will give us the storyline, if you wish, on which we will hang most of the events. The third book is Barbara Fowler's Hellenistic Poetry, an anthology. This book will give us an opportunity to take a look at the literature of the period of the Hellenistic age. One particularly, the epic poem by Apollonius of Rhodes called the Argonautica, which details the exploits and journeys of Jason, a legendary character in the distant Greek past. And there will be an opportunity then also for us to examine some other representative genres of poetry from the period. And there will be an essay which will be directed towards that we'll talk about in a minute. The fourth on your list is a book by Peter Green. He's an English scholar, a very famous one in the world of Alexander studies and Hellenistic studies. And he wrote a work a number of years ago called Alexander of Macedon, an historical biography. This will be our main text for the incredible journey and story and issues of Alexander the Great. And you'll notice on the syllabus that readings in green, noted as G, you'll notice in the assignments, they are noted by just the first letter of the name, just to save some space. But he will give us a very solid, very detailed account of the rise of Alexander, his progress and his conquests, and ultimately his death and some of the issues that are attached to it. The final book by Plutarch is called The Age of Alexander. Plutarch was a Greek writer, wrote in the 2nd century AD during the period of the Roman Empire, but was interested in many different topics, and he wrote a whole series of what are called parallel lives, where he would team up a Greek leader, a famous person, with a Roman famous person and create a kind of a tandem of these two lives. And one of his more famous is that of Alexander the Great, and not too surprisingly, he's paired up with Julius Caesar in the Roman world, two great conquerors, if you wish. But this book then draws from a much larger group of lives and gives us an opportunity of taking a first-hand look through the eyes of a writer from the ancient world of what is happening in that age. So the editors of this Penguin Classics have put together a number of biographies that are primarily in the 4th century or early 3rd century BC, during the time of the rise of Macedonia to world power, both of Philip II, the father, and Alexander the Great. So we'll be taking a look at a few of those, and this is primarily to give us that inside look, that it's not being filtered through secondary modern works, it's actually coming from an ancient writer. Now, Plutarch himself, of course, lived many centuries after the events that he describes, but he often has sources which are no longer available to us, so he's a goldmine of information. And even though we don't need to believe everything he says, and we certainly shouldn't, he gives us information we would find nowhere else. So we're going to take a look at that. If we proceed along to the next section, let's talk a little bit about the assignments that you're going to be asked to do. In this course, you'll be required to complete 3 short essays, 2 to 3 pages in length, double-spaced, typed, and of course, grammatically polished, on questions relating to the lectures and reading materials. We won't start that until next week. The first week we just want to get into the material, but after that we'll probably have those essays appear for the next 3 weeks, and we'll talk more about that when we get into some details. These essays should be submitted electronically by noon on the Friday of each week. the week in which they're assigned. In addition, there will be a longer critical essay of 4 to 5 pages on Apollonius of Rhodes' epic poem, the Argonautica, which is found, as I noted, in Barbara Fowler's Hellenistic Poetry on your reading list. And that's due on the Wednesday of week 5 of the semester. At the end of the term, there will be a take-home exam not to exceed 10 pages, and it will consist of identifications and essays. And this is to be submitted electronically no later than noon on Friday, August 15th, which is the first day, of final exams. So in other words, what do we have and what don't we have? First of all, I am very keen on the idea of finding out what you think in terms of the written word. I personally avoid at all times multiple choice, fill in the blank, things of that sort, which I do not find favors the acquisition or the dissemination of knowledge. That's just how I feel about it. And with a class of this size, with 19, we can certainly, and I will certainly be able to keep up on the essays. So it's really in your hands to do well because you have the opportunity of putting together your thoughts in the quiet of your own studies, wherever you're located, and not have to feel some enormous pressure of knowing the right answer to a given question. There is no one right answer. There are many different answers. Some are better, stronger, more well-documented and defended than others, but that's the nature of the beast. And so it's all essay. It's just a matter of whether it's short essays or longer essays, middling-sized essays. So that's the world we will live in as we explore Alexander the Great. So if you look at the next section, you'll see that there are the short essays, 30%, weighed 30%. That means 10% each. The critical essay, which I noted is on the Argonautica, will be 20%, and then the take-home exam, on which I'm certain you will all excel because you'll have an opportunity to do so, is 40%. And then there's a participation grade that will be reflective of what I hope will be a very lively and active discussion forum in the Scholar site that Jared is thinking very deeply about and bringing up to speed, and both he and I will be involved in that. So we're experimenting with various things, but that is where the participation grade would be. It's a little like if we were actually looking at each other, which I wish I could, in a classroom setting. This would be the time where we would engage in a discussion about the materials that we've been reading or seeing, the PowerPoints and so forth. So it's the closest thing to that that at least I'm able to do at this point. Then finally, the Virginia Tech Honor Code is fully enforced in this class. I think that's probably a given, but it's good to be stated. Plagiarism will not be permitted in any form, and if there's any question about what plagiarism means, I follow with a definition. Plagiarism is the reproduction in any work submitted for the class that is authored by another without clearly acknowledging the source. And if there are any questions about the fine lines between when it's plagiarism, when it's not, whether if you happen to use Wikipedia, is it plagiarism when you quote from Wikipedia? These are things that we can talk about as we go along. But I should say, with respect to Wikipedia, it's a very useful tool. Many of you have used it, but it is only as good as its sources. And if its sources are not good or detailed or verifiable, then Wikipedia is worth nothing more than anybody sitting down and saying anything they want. So it has great value, it's very convenient, but it must be used with great caution. And you would never use a citation to Wikipedia in a research paper, if you were to write one, without some serious objections. Always go to a source that's more verifiable. Anybody can contribute anything on Wikipedia. Some of it's excellent, and some of it is really, quite frankly, not very good and not very accurate. So that's all part of what we have to learn how to treat as well. What follows then with the rest of the syllabus is a week-by-week listing along with the assignments that I want you to read. So if we take, for instance, at week 1, we have Prelude, Persian Wars and Aftermath. That will come, I will embed that within the next topic, the hegemonial struggles of the 4th century BC. And then that will then go on to the rise of Philip of Macedon, and then ultimately then to the arrival on the scene of Greece, and ultimately the world, of Alexander III of Macedon. In other words, Alexander before he became the Great. And I have listed there the readings that I would like you to take a look at this week. For instance, Artaxerxes is a Persian king. He's one of the more unusual biographies of Plutarch, but he's there, and I think some context would be good for us in the 4th century BC. Pelopidas is a Theban cavalry commander, and the second in command to one of the most interesting and innovative generals of the 4th century, Epaminondas. Unfortunately, Plutarch's biography of Epaminondas is lost, so we only have then the one that dealt with his lieutenant, his second in command, Pelopidas. And then when we get to the section on Philip of Macedon, there's readings in green, as you can see, G, and then Plutarch again on the most famous Athenian, if not Greek orator, Demosthenes. Again, for first-hand context, contemporary context. And then finally, at the end of the week, we will, in the course of our reading, then broach the issue of Alexander early on in his career, and also the source issue, which is a major one for Alexander the Great that we have to deal with. So as for how you parse all of this out, it doesn't really, I don't mind how you configure your time as long as within the course of the week you take the opportunity to read all of the materials which I have indicated here. This course will have a lot of PowerPoints, and those PowerPoints, when I start putting them up as we go along, those PowerPoints will be found in the resources link for your Scholar site as I continue to put them on. This will probably be also where I'll put handouts, useful handouts of outlines of various things that I think are important for understanding the material. They can both supplement and complement the readings that we have. And I'll feed you a lot of information. What's different from a normal course is I would stand before you and I would talk through a PowerPoint, and we would talk about the images. And I do a lot of material culture because I in fact have done, I have excavated as a graduate student. I follow archaeology very closely. I think it's supremely important, and I travel very widely, and it's at the heart of all the new stuff that's coming up in terms of new material. So I put a lot of weight on it. So when I put the PowerPoint then in a normal setting, then I have the opportunity of seeing you and presenting this material. Since we are not in that format, then what I'm doing, and this is what I'm experimenting with as I speak, is to include an audio of what I would do in a normal, as normal as possible fashion, a audio commentary to the PowerPoints, which I will put with the embedded audio on the resources link of your Scholar site. And so there'll be a number then of those PowerPoints that will be available for you to review, to look at more than one time, and become very familiar with the material because down the line that will play a part in how well you do, for instance, on the take-home exam as well as on the essays. So that's sort of the plan. There are many other little things and details that I could talk about at this point, but I think As I usually do when I have a normal class, I rarely ever keep you all in the classroom the full hour. And so, following in that tradition, what I can say is I'm delighted to have you all on board. I hope that this will be a wonderful learning experience for you. I love the material, and obviously I've spent quite a bit of time on Alexander and on the Hellenistic period in terms of my own research, and I'm hoping to share in what I know, but also find out what you think about some of these great figures and great issues and events which occurred from the 4th century BC down to the end of the 1st century BC. So the course really covers about 300 years, approximately, and we're going to get to know it in a very special way. Perhaps it won't become our BFF, but it will be as close to that as we possibly can. And maybe more importantly, as we gain a new body of knowledge together, we'll have some fun doing it. Because if you can't have fun in the acquisition of knowledge, then it seems to defeat the whole reason for pursuing it. So that's just my philosophy and my take on it. Now I will finally end with, I am, for some of you, I don't know where you're located, but I can tell you where I'm located right now. I'm 7 time zones away. I'm currently in Athens, Greece, which is where I spend usually my summers, at least part of my summers, doing work on various projects. So for the first 2.5 weeks or so, I will be in this setting. Jared Delaney will be our home guard. He will be in Blacksburg on the front lines, and I will be over here in Greece. You have to remember then that you can always contact me at any time by email, and I'm very diligent about getting back to you if there are any questions about one thing or the other. But be aware that I'm 7 hours ahead of you if you're on the East Coast, and therefore, when you're getting up, it's already 3 o'clock in the afternoon here. So we'll just have to kind of be flexible and go with this amazing ability to be able to share this experience at great distances. And that's, I suppose, what online courses and distance learning is all about. So, as I said, it's all new to me, but I'm looking forward to engaging with the material and presenting a course that I think will be valuable and worthwhile to you. And I look forward to finding out how you think along the way on how it's going. So with that, I'm going to conclude, and what you should be doing then is taking a look at material as it begins to appear, first and foremost on resources, but I will continue to be communicating with you by messages, either by announcements on the Scholar site or in some other capacity. So I'll always be online, so to speak, and available for consultation. So there aren't really any office hours because it's whenever I happen to open up the computer, my laptop, or wherever I happen to be in Greece at that time and I have Wi-Fi. So that's part of the excitement of it all. So welcome to the class. I look forward to not seeing you, but look forward to hearing from you in one way or the other through the computer. So thanks again for signing up. Bye-bye.